Okay, so this is the game Richárd Rapport versus Liren. As you all know, in 3 months, Liren is playing a world championship match in Kazakhstan against Jan Nepomniachtchi. So this tournament, Ding is fighting for like 11th place out of 14. So he better keep fighting. Resource not found. Bam. Okay, so they played what was going to be a Najdorf. And then Richárd, in his best German, said, "Ich don't think so." Instead of playing knight takes d4, which would have led to a Najdorf, because that's what Ding plays, he played queen takes d4, which is usually what I play. That's my move. Okay? And the only person who plays that who's any good more than like once a year is Gadakomsky. And even he hasn't been playing it recently. Okay, so knight c6 is the most common. He played knight f6 and they transposed.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So what is that variation called?
Queen takes d4 in the Sicilian. I don't know if it has a name.
Oh,
this says check over variation. I've never heard it called that.
Check over variation?
Yeah, you got to check it over, then decide not to do it. Okay, so they transposed to the main variation. I had this position against Jeffrey Shong before Jeffrey Shong was better than me. Well, he was better than me, but he was lower rated than me. And we drew by repetition and reputation in about 10 moves. This was in a Spice Cup about 10 years ago. And in that game, Jeffrey played knight to d7. But he played bishop d7, which just transposes to the main lines. So I know this. This is my stuff. Okay, take here, e6, castles, bishop e7. Now, I've had this position many times, and I play the Zvagintsev variation because, and I call it that because he's the one who plays it. Nobody else plays it. So I just named it after him. Now, for several $1 trillion, what's Zvagintsev's first name?
Zvagintsev?
Yeah, it's spelled ZV, Zvagintsev, then AGINTISCV maybe. Something like that. You know his first name?
No.
Vadim Zvagintsev. Nobody in the chat knew that. That's how to look it up. Right, he's 2,600 feet, eh? Okay, now the Zvagintsev variation is you take this, which nobody does, just Zvagintsev and me, and then takes. Okay, and then here you play knight e5. And this is about equal, but I did a long preparation in a slow game for which famous Smith-Morra practitioner?
The tennis player?
Correct. I was going to say and tennis player. Mark Esserman.
I couldn't remember his name.
And I beat Mark Esserman in this position in one of the St. Louis round robin tournaments. And I knew more theory than this. I knew like the whole game basically.
I knew the guy.
Yeah. Anyway, I memorized this one variation, but nobody plays bishop takes f6, just Zvagintsev. Okay, now Rapport played a more common move. He played queen to d3. And the idea of queen to d3 is to get the queen off of the d4 square so we can play knight d4 later. And then perhaps if we attack on the king's side, which is typical when you castle queen side, you can move your queen over here somewhere and start attacking. And eventually, it's going to look like a very unusual Rouser Sicilian where white's played an early bishop here and takes, which nobody does. Okay, so black is fine. He played queen a5, reasonable. He put it in h6, bishop d2, trying to do tricks here. Queen a6. And he wants to trade queens because even though he doubles his pawns, he gets all these open files for his rooks. And he did indeed trade queens. The engine says this is equal. Now his pawn is attacked here on e4. You can see that. And the engine wants to play rook he1, and he played rook de1, which is about the same. So the rook is here instead of here. Rook's here for attacking. The rook's good here for putting pressure on d6. Seems like neither one's very important. Okay, now in this position, Ding made a, what's the word I want to use?
Blunder? I don't know.
No, it's when you can't take it back. He made a
touch move.
No. Like let's say you're mad at somebody, so you don't talk to them on the phone for a week. Then you talk to them on the phone for a week. Like you start talking to them again.
Yeah.
So that decision didn't matter. You just started talking to them again. Or what if you killed them? Then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have killed them. Darn. It's a decision you can't take back.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, what's the word? Committal. Thank you. Irrevocable. That's good. Thanks, 3GM, for the rate of 3, which is part of your name. He made a committal decision, and it's not good. Okay? If you made this move, I would yell at you. And more importantly, to give you a good hint of what move it was, if Jill played this move, I would yell at her. And Spencer would.
Oh, yeah.
So what did Black play?
Probably E5.
That's right.
I used to play, okay, let me tell you, I used to play a lot of different Sicilian variations, and especially the dragon. And, well, that's not even true, especially. I went through a phase with each one, and Dave yelled at me all the time. I told you not to move the E-pawn.
Me and Spencer have both given private lessons to Jill and said, don't play E5 in the
know.
Sicilian. And then she would take like a game off, and then the next game E5.
What would happen would be all these pawns would come at me, and I would get scared. I'd move the
Right.
E-pawn.
Now in this position, it's very likely that at some point in the near future, White's going to play E5. And so he put a stop to that with E5. Now E5 weakens these two squares, which obviously he knows. But this is really nice what White did. This is a good demonstration of what you should do about this. Which White minor piece basically can't move forward at all right now? Nowhere to go. Which White minor piece? These are the 3 minor pieces.
Can't.
Which one can't move
On
forward?
F3.
Right. Knight can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. So probably Ding was thinking White's going to play Knight D4, and then maybe F4, maybe G4, and so forth. So I'll play E5, and then he can't do anything. Now the Knight wants to go here, or here, or here. So he made the move you would have played, except for one thing. He played Knight H2. That's the best move. Okay, he wants to play Knight F1, Knight E3, and the Knight has access to these squares. Also, he wants to play F3, but don't ever do that, so that his Knight and Rook aren't tied down to his E-pawn, which is now fixed. So Knight H2 is the engine move. It doesn't like the move E5. It says that White's better now. Exactly.
I apologize.
It's Karen, I assume.
I was holding.
Holden.
How do I get to shut up? Okay.
Holden always calling you while you're streaming. Probably he knows you're streaming. He's watching now.
FaceTime.
Hi, Holden. Exactly.
All right, I'll call him.
Okay, so Black played Knight to D7. He might want to put his Knight on D6, on E6. That's a good square for the Knight. And he'd like at some point in the game to play F5, because that's his only good pawn break. D5, not good, because got this action here. So F5 I'll play later. Knight C5 I'll play later. Okay, White continued.
So what are the intentions with regards to castling for Black? do you think?
Not very important here because the king's not under attack.
Right.
It's important for getting your rooks connected.
Well, what made me think is when you said if they're going to go F5 later, well, so
Probably castle kingside then.
I guess you
Yeah, also the engine says you could play F5 now, and he did play F5 now.
It's pretty weak over there. With
Right, the engine
White
says that
squares.
White's better here. But on the other hand, if Black does nothing, then he does nothing. White plays F3, Knight E3, Knight E5, Knight F5, Knight C4. That puts pressure on this, and Black sits here and does nothing. So with the two bishops, we have to activate our bishops. So he played F5. Okay, now in this position, the engine says taking is the best move, and knight here is the second best move. And obviously, if you're a human, taking looks crazy because you can play bishop takes G2. So it looks really risky to do that.
Right.
But the engine still wants to do it. But he played F3, never play F3. And now it says White's only a little better. Okay, and he took, which is correct. The engine wants to take with the knight, but he took with the pawn. And now the engine says Black is fine because Black plays knight F6.
Yeah, because now they got to babysit that pawn.
Right,
on
so
the
F3
floor.
and F takes they're both bad moves.
I would have gone with
Right.
the knight.
Right, so F3 was bad and F takes was bad, and now the engine actually slightly prefers Black. So now he has to save his pawn, so he played knight G3. On the other hand, the knight was on F3, now it's on G3, which defends this, and the knight can go to F5. You stop knight H5. So the knights are pretty good. Okay, now the engine wants to play G6 because that stops the white knight from going anywhere. Probably he was worried about h5 kicking the pawn away so his knight could get in. So now he played a move that would confuse the audience, which is you. Instead of castling, he played rook f8. He figured maybe his king will go to d7 later if it has to defend this pawn on d6, in case that gets attacked. The engine's not a big fan of that move, says it's equal now. He played knight f5, and then he played rook f7, defending his pawn. h5, fixing the king side. Black always plays bishop f8. And this is why he played rook here. He wants to play rook here, get his rook out to these open files. His bishop defends both pawns. And the engine says this is about equal. Knight went back to g3, doing nothing. And now he played a move most people wouldn't think of, but it's actually the engine move. Knight to d1. He doesn't want his knight here forever. He wants to maneuver his knight to other squares and probably wants to play bishop c3 or c3 and shut down the c file. But again, the position's about equal. Doubles the rooks. Bishop a5, kicking the rook out. Then rook h4. God damn. Defending his pawn, which needs... All these pawns are weak. Mm-hmm. So even though the position's equal, it's the kind of position where somebody might win. Because it's, a lot of mistakes are possible. Okay, now what Black made a bad move because he's playing a Sicilian. He had all he could stands. He can't stands no more. The engine just wants to play boring. Like knight h7, knight g5, bishop e7, king. Okay, but he played d5. He couldn't help it. Typically, you don't want to play e5 when you see a rook and a king here. But that's like the Yasser Seirawan explanation. The Grandmaster explanation is he calculated the variations. He got rid of his weak d-pawn. He has the two bishops. His bishop can get out. And he'll have a passed e-pawn, which may or may not be weak. However, in this instance, he was wrong. d5 is a mistake. Takes. Notice the bishop is attacking this and pretending to attack that, which it might be attacking. Because if you trap it with b3, bishop b2 check. Okay, rook takes e5 check. Black's down a pawn, but Black's bishop have gotten out. And he's threatening the a pawn and the g pawn. Bishop b4, getting rid of the two bishops. That was an important move, making sure this bishop never does anything good. He takes on g2, takes on f8, takes on f8. And this ending is obviously better for white because of the pawn majorities. I have a passed c pawn, and I have 3-2, and your 2's no good. And you have 2-1, and your 2's blocked by my 1. And also white's rooks are very active. And I have a passed c pawn, so I have the winning chances here. So d5 was a bad decision because in the long term, it just gave white a passed c pawn.
Mm-hmm. The deep freeze.
Okay, knight e3, attacking the bishop. Bishop went back. b3 to play c4. The engine wants to play c4 right away, but I don't see how it makes a difference. Okay, and obviously our majority is better than your majority. In fact, this is pretty good for white. This pawn on g7 can be weak. So it's hard for Black to get a passed pawn. So he finally decided to give himself a passed pawn. Rook went to h2. Could also take on passant, but he decided keeping more pawns on is better because this h-pawn is weak. I can play knight here, and you have to defend your pawn on h6. Okay, king e6. The engine prefers a5, trying to stop white's majority. Rook e2. Bishop f3, question mark. And this is actually the losing move. He may or may not have been losing earlier. Now the engine's giving this big plus, and this is just a miscalculation. The rook goes back, and his idea was to take this pawn, but that's bad, and he should feel bad. And the engine says he has to go back here now, king f7, which obviously you don't want to do. He didn't play king e6 to play king f7. And then knight f5 would basically attack his pawn. There's like no defense to it. So king f7's forced, but he blundered again with knight takes h5. I'm assuming he was in time trouble. And after knight g4 check, he's completely losing. And I guess he just didn't see knight g4 check. Notice you're in check. You can't go here because it's illegal. Mm-hmm. Can't go here because it's illegal. And, well, you can go here. Here and here are the only moves. And your knight's not defended sufficiently. And I have tactical tricks. Now, if you play this is the easiest tactical trick. God damn. Okay, so he played king d6. And now he plays knight f5 check. And unfortunately, your rook and bishop are set up to be forked. And when I play knight e5, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
So he just didn't see that when he played knight h5. He didn't see his tactics. I assume time trouble, because Ding's pretty good at seeing stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's it. You can't. Nothing you can do. You can't give up your bishop, and you can't give up your rook.
So Ding isn't doing well in the tournament.
No. So he played g4.
Oh.
Takes here, and then he resigned down the exchange for nothing. And engine says +5. I wouldn't resign here. I wouldn't even think of resigning here. But the engine says he should resign. So shows you what I know. Yeah, my pass pawn's pretty good, and your pawns are stopped, and my king is coming to babysit, so forth. Mm-hmm. So this was like a really bad blunder. When he played bishop f3, he was in time trouble, and he was expecting this would be fine because he wins the pawn. But after knight g4 check, the knight's come into e5, and these are forked. And you notice he didn't play knight e5 right away because his knight's not defended on g3. So he checked first because the knight's attacking this knight. Mm-hmm. Then he played knight e5. So he didn't see that when he played knight takes h5.
Right.
And he was obviously in time trouble because this is move 37, 38, 39. So the truth hurts. And Rapport wasn't having a good tournament, but lately he's been doing okay. And Ding's just had a bad tournament the whole time. Ding won in round 1, and then that was it. He's just losing and drawing. Mm-hmm. Ding's having quite a bad tournament. So that was unnecessary to lose, but somebody had to lose it.